Okay, so this video will be two messages in one. Both are found in chapter 33 of the Quran, in the chapter called Al-Ahzab, or the Confederates. So the introduction on page 1235 reads, the series of chapters beginning with chapter 26 having been closed with the last chapter, we now come back to the hard facts of this life. Two questions are mainly considered here. 1. The attempt by violence and brute force to crush the truth, and 2. The attempt by slander or unseemly conduct to poison the relations of women with men. As regards the first, the story of the Ahzab or Confederates who tried to surround and annihilate the Muslim community in Medina is full of underhand intrigues on the part of such diverse enemies as the pagan Quraysh, the Jews in relation to the Banu Nadir, who had been already expelled from Medina for their treachery, the Ghatafan tribe of Bedouin Arabs from the interior, and the Jewish tribe of Banu Qurayza in Medina. This was the unholy confederacy against Islam, but though they caused a great deal of anxiety and suffering to the beleaguered Muslims, Islam came triumphantly out of the trial and got more firmly established than ever. So just study the qualities of these tribes and relate them, see them as archetypes symbolically with regards to the forces which operate against truth. And as I've stated earlier, see the nation of Islam and the Muslim community as being synonymous with the nation of Israel. So the Quraysh in Mecca had tried all sorts of persecution, boycott, insults, and bodily injuries to the Muslims, leading to their partial hijrah to Abyssinia. And their hijrah their partial exodus to Abyssinia, and their exodus as a body to Medina. The first armed conflict between them and the Muslims took place at Badr in Ramadan AH 2, when the Quraysh were signally defeated. Next year, Shawwal AH 3, they came to take revenge on Medina. The battle was fought at Uhud, and though the Muslims suffered severely, Medina was saved and the Meccans had to return to Mecca with their object frustrated. Then they began to make a network of intrigues and alliances and besieged Medina with a force of 10,000 men in Shawwal and Zulqa'dah in AH 5. This is the siege of the Confederates referred to in chapter 33, this chapter, verses 9 to 27, which lasted over 2 weeks. Some accounts give 27 days. It caused much suffering from hunger, cold, and unceasing showers of arrows, and constant general or concentrated assaults. But it ended in the discomfiture of the Confederates and established Islam firmer than ever. It was a well-organized and formidable attack, but the Muslims had made preparations to meet it. One of the preparations which took the enemy by surprise was the trench Khandaq, dug around Medina by the Prophet's order and under the supervision of Salman the Persian. The siege and battle are therefore known as the Battle of the Trench or the Battle of the Confederates. As regards the poison and dignity of the ladies of the Prophet's household, as regards the position and dignity of the ladies of the Prophet's household and the Muslim women generally, salutary principles are laid down to safeguard their honor and protect them from slander and insult. The ladies of the household interested themselves in social work and work of instruction. For the Muslim women were being trained more and more in community service. Two of them, The two Zainabs devoted themselves to the poor. The nursing of the wounded on or by the battlefield was especially necessary in those days of warfare. The Prophet's daughter Fatima, then aged about 19 to 20, lovingly nursed her father's wounds at Uhud. In AH 3, Rufaidah nursed Sa'd ibn Mu'az's wounds at the siege of Medina by the Confederates in AH 5, and in the Khaybar expedition in AH 7, Muslim women went out from Medina for nursing services. A portion of this surah sums up the lessons of the Battle of the Trench and must have been revealed sometime after the battle in Shawwal. AH 5, the marriage with Zainab referred to in verses 37 also took place in the same year. In summary, the pagan customs in human relationships should be abandoned, and men and women should be held in honor according to natural relationships. The Battle of the Trench and its lessons, hypocrites and their fears, truth and noble examples are to be followed. High position and seemly conduct for the Prophet's wives, unhappy marriages like Zainab's not to be perpetuated on false scruples, and the Prophet's wives or husbands are to be treated kindly and gently. Respect due to the Prophets and their family, slander to be avoided and punished. Guard your words and your responsibilities. And they break those points down with the corresponding verses. And so I stopped reading the introduction on page 1236, and so I'm just going to begin reading a bit of the beginning of the chapter. So it starts with, in the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful. O Prophet, fear God and hearken not to the unbelievers and the hypocrites. Verily God is full of knowledge and wisdom, but follow that which comes to thee by inspiration from thy Lord. For God is well acquainted with all that you do. And put thy trust in God, and enough is God as a disposer of affairs. God has not made for any man two hearts in his breast, nor has he made your wives, whom you divorce by zihar, your mothers, nor has he made your adopted sons your sons. Such is only your manner of speech by your mouths, but God tells you the truth, and he shows the right way. So you're supposed to take it symbolically. So call them by after their fathers, that is, juster in the sight of God. But if you know not their fathers' names, then they are your brothers in faith, or your friends, but there is no blame on you if you make a mistake therein. What counts is the intention of your hearts, and God is oft forgiving, most merciful. So the Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his or her wives or husbands, because we're relating the Prophet to our modern day prophets or messengers, are, so the Prophet Muhammad, in his case, his wives are their mothers, or, and as that relates as well to the women in the prophetic community who are gifted with wisdom. The wisdom is timeless. And so blood relations among each other have closer personal ties in the book of God than the brotherhood of believers and muhajirs. So nevertheless do you what is just to your closest friends, such is the writing in the book of God. And remember, we took from the prophets their covenant, and from thee, from Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus the son of Mary, we took from them a solemn covenant, that God may question the truthful about their truthfulness, and he has prepared for the unbelievers a grievous chastisement. And I also feel led to say that when it says here that the blood relations among each other have closer personal ties, it's just your service to humanity with regards to just the degree of truthfulness you've accepted into your life. And so just that just ties of kinship with regards to believers and God's community. And then it goes on to say in section 2, O you who believe, remember the grace of God bestowed on you when there came down on you hosts to overwhelm you, but we sent against them a hurricane and forces that you saw not, but God sees clearly all that you do. Behold, they came on you from above you and from below you, and behold, the eyes swerved and the hearts gaped up to the throats, and you imagined various vain thoughts about God. In that situation where the believers tried, they were shaken as by a tremendous shaking, and behold, the hypocrites and those in whose hearts is disease say, God and his messenger promised us nothing but delusions. Behold, a party among them said, You men of Yathrib, you cannot stand the attack, therefore go back. And a band of them asked for leave of the prophet, saying, Truly our houses are bare and exposed. Though they were not exposed, they intended nothing but to run away. And if an entry had been effected to them from the sides of the city, and they had been incited to sedition, they would certainly have brought it to pass, with none but a brief delay. And yet they had already covenanted with God not to turn their backs, and a covenant with God must surely be answered for. Say, running away will not profit you if you are running away from death or slaughter, and even if you do escape, no more than a brief respite will you be allowed to enjoy. Say, who is it that can screen you from God if it be his wish to give you punishment or to give you mercy? And so the footnote for that verse is 3688. So nor will they find for themselves besides God any protector or helper. Verily God knows those among you who keep back men, and those who say to their brethren, Come along to us, but come not to the fight except for just a little while. Covetous over you, then when fear comes thou wilt see them looking to thee, their eyes revolving like one who faints from death. But when the fear is past, they will smite you with sharp tongues, covetous of goods. Such men have no faith, and so God has made their deeds. So footnote 3691, of none effect, and that is easy for God, 3692. They think that the Confederates have not withdrawn, and if the Confederates should come again, so they think that the Confederates have not withdrawn, and if the Confederates should come again, they would wish they were in the deserts, wandering among the Bedouins, and seeking news about you from a safe distance. And if they were in your midst, they would fight but little. So in section 3, you have indeed in the messenger of God an excellent exemplar. And this is page 1245. And the recording said it was like 1253 or something as I was reading the page number. And so the message he gave me actually started on page 1246, but the verse was cut in half and it proceeded on the page I was just reading and finished with. So one of the messages begins on page 1246. So the verse continues. I'm going to reread the verse starting from section 3. You have indeed in the messenger of God an excellent exemplar for him who hopes in God and the final day, and who remember God much. 3695. When the believers saw the Confederate forces, they said, This is what God and his messenger had promised us. So messenger has footnote 3696. And God and his messenger told us what was true. And it only added to their faith and their zeal and obedience. Among the believers are men who have been true to their covenant with God. Of them, some have died and some still wait, but they have never changed their determination in the least, that God may reward these men of truth for their truth and punish the hypocrites, if that be his will, or turn to them in mercy, for God is oft forgiving, most merciful. And God turned back the unbelievers for all their fury, no advantage. 3699. Did they gain, and even is God for the believers in their fight, and God is full of strength, exalted in might. And those of the people of the book who aided them, God did take them down from their strongholds and cast terror into their hearts. And then here's the other verse, the other word actually follows along on page 1248. and so their hearts, so that some you slew and some you made captives. So the verse is cut in half on 2 pages, 1247 and 1248, which is my second word. I'm going to read the entire verse. Which is verse 26. And those of the people of the book who aided them, God did take them down from their strongholds and cast terror into their hearts, so that some you slew and some you made captives. And he made you heirs of their lands, their houses, and their goods, and of a land which you had not frequented before, and God has power over all things. And then section 4, O prophet, say to thy consorts, if it be that you desire the life of this world and its glitter, then come, I will provide for you your enjoyment and set you free in a handsome manner. But if you seek God and his messenger and the home of the hereafter. One second. Verily God has prepared for the well-doers among you a great reward. O consorts of the prophet, if any of you were guilty of evident unseemly conduct, the punishment would be doubled to her or him, and that is easy for God. So they have 3708 and 3709. 3708 for conduct, and that is easy for God, and 3709. But to any of you that is devout in the service of God and his messenger, or messengers, and works righteousness, to her or him shall we grant your reward twice, 3710, and we have prepared for her or him a generous sustenance, 3711. O consorts of the prophet. One second. I'm just going to look something up. Okay, so when I looked up consort, we have a couple definitions. So it could be a wife, husband, or companion. It could be, in particular, the spouse of a reigning monarch, but it can be a companion. A ship sailing in company with others. Also, habitually associated with someone, typically with the disapproval of others, or to agree or be in harmony with. So it's used in those various forms. So, O consorts of the prophet. One second. I feel led to start a bit earlier. So O consorts of the prophet, if any of you were guilty or evident unseemly conduct, the punishment would be doubled to her, him, and that is easy for God. But to any of you that is devout in the service of God and his messenger, and work righteousness, to her, him shall we grant your reward twice, and we have prepared for you a generous sustenance. O consorts of the prophet, you are not like any other men or women. If you do fear God, be not too complacent of speech, lest one in whose hearts is a disease should be moved with desire, but speak you a speech that is just. 37:13. And stay quiet in your houses, and make not a dazzling display, like that of the former times of ignorance, and establish regular prayer, and give alms, and obey God and his messenger. And God only wishes to remove all abominations from you, you members of the family, and to make you pure and spotless. So for members, 37:15. So, and recite what is rehearsed to you in your homes of the signs of God and his wisdom, for God is all subtle, all aware. So in section 5, for Muslim men and women, so for believing men and women, for devout men and women, for true men and women, for men and women who are patient and constant, for men and women who humble themselves, for men and women who give in charity and forgive, 37:19, for men and women who fast, for men and women who guard their chastity, and for men and women who engage much in God's remembrance. For them has God prepared forgiveness and a great reward. It is not fitting for a believer, man or woman, when a matter has been decided by God and his messenger, to have any option about their decision. In 37:21, if anyone disobeys God and his messenger, he is indeed on a clearly wrong path. Behold, thou didst say to one who has received the grace of God, 37:22, my stomach, and thy favor retain thou in wedlock thy wife, and fear God. But thou didst hide in thy heart that which God was about to make manifest. Thou didst fear the people, but it is more fitting that thou shouldst fear God than when Zaid. So the name Zaid means to increase, a master. So when Zaid had dissolved his marriage with her, right, 37:25, we joined her in marriage to thee, or it can be reversed, right, the roles, in order that in future there may be no difficulty to the believers in the matter of marriage with their wives or husbands, in 37:26, of their adopted sons, when the later have dissolved their marriage with them, and or adopted sons or daughters, and God's command must be fulfilled. Right? So please listen to this with spiritual ears. It's a lot, which there you have, you really help me, and there's a lot more grace when you just allow God to interpret it for you while I'm reading it. And if you have any difficulty understanding, take it back to Him, and I'll try my best, and God will help me to explain this in other ways for you. Since I don't want to slow down too much, and since I have a lot of page numbers that I would like to look up for to really complement this word. So there can be no difficulty to the prophet in what God has indicated to him in 37:27, or her, right? As a duty, it was the practice approved of God amongst those of old that have passed away. And the command of God is a decree determined. So passed away, 37:28, decree determined, 37:29. It is the practice of those who preach the messages of God and fear Him and fear none but God. And enough is God to call men to account. 37:30. Muhammad, peace be upon him, is not the father of any of your men, but he is the messenger of God, and the seal of the prophets. 37:31. And God has full knowledge of all things. So in section 6, O you who believe, remember God with much remembrance, and glorify Him morning and evening. He it is who sends blessings on you, as do His angels, that He may bring you out from the depths of darkness and into light, and He is full of mercy to the believers. 37:33. Their salutation on the day they meet Him will be, or her, will be peace, and He has prepared for them a generous reward. O prophet, truly we have sent thee as a witness, a bearer of glad tidings, and a warner, and as one who invites to God's grace by His leave, and as a lamp spreading light. Then give the glad tidings to the believers, that they shall have from Allah a great bounty. And God is really putting on my heart Palestinians right now. So, this is for them, that He gives you glad tidings. So, and then He assures you that He shall give you from His infinite and vast and great bounty, double and even more. And for anyone who's oppressed and afflicted, refugees, anyone who's displaced, so anyone who's going through any difficulty, this is what He assures you. And He continues to say, and obey not the behests of the unbelievers and the hypocrites, and disregard their insolence, and put thy trust in God, for enough is God as a disposer of your affairs. And once again, in verse 48, and obey not the behests of the unbelievers and the hypocrites, and disregard their insolence. 37:37. But put thy trust in God, for enough is God as a disposer of your affairs. O you who believe, when you marry believing women or believing men, and then divorce them, before you have touched them, in the sense that, or known them, in the sense that Mary, when God revealed, the promise to her, she said, I know no man, right? So that is how God is pouring it into me to take this. He's saying, before you have touched them, before you have known them, no period of that. 1 second. We're going to go over the footnotes, so I'll explain what these words mean. So, have you to count in respect of them. So give them a present and release them in a handsome manner. So, O prophet, we have made lawful to thee thy wives or husbands to whom thou hast paid their dower. Or, so it says here that the dower could also mean the part of or interest in the real estate of a deceased spouse given by law to the surviving spouse during the survivor's life. But I would just say, so it's just the part or interest in your shared purposes, in your lives, in your covenant, right? In your covenant, in marriage, in God's one message, or through your promises, the fulfillment of your promises and pursuits in life, your missions, which are not only for you but for all humanity, right? So it says, yes. So, O prophet, we have made lawful to thee thy wives or husbands to whom thou hast paid their dowers. So you have a share in this inheritance, and you have made the sacrifice because in order to share, for God to gift you these marriages, he has to teach you about unconditional love. And with regards to that, you have to learn first to give. And so that's why, night precedes day. You have to pray and fast, and you war in the spirit first. You do your part, right? You give your all, they give their all. So for dowers, it's 37:42. And those whom thy right hand possesses out of the captives of war, whom God has assigned to thee, and daughters of thy paternal uncles and aunts and daughters. And so this is all to be taken symbolically, because we are called to have a higher nature, a higher state of being. And so these are just elements. God is just using these words to describe elements in nature. And so just take this symbolically with spiritual ears, please, so that you get the appropriate message that God is having me convey. So, of thy maternal uncles and aunts who migrated with thee, and any believing woman who gives herself to the prophet, if the prophet wishes to wed her, with regards to, Jesus, or returning for, his bride, right? Or the church. And so, right? And so, you understand what I'm trying to say. So, right, so to any believing woman who gives herself to the prophet, if the prophet wishes to wed her, as being the church, or an aspect, a member of the church, a member of the community who's wedding the prophet. So this only for thee and not for the believers at large. We know what we have appointed for them as to their wives and the captives whom their right hands possess, in order that there should be no difficulty for thee. And so this is, there's the distinction with purpose and with degree of virtue and service in the community, and the roles that we play. And God, and this is really, if you pray and you want a greater calling, you have to understand and be willing to undertake the responsibilities that come along with that, and God will empower you, and he will equip to you, and he desires to give you more responsibility so that you can do more good. So he will never withhold that from you. But you just pray to him and ask him, and he'll test you, and he'll prepare you for such a role, and he'll help you. But within the test as well, he's revealing to us our shortcomings and the areas where we need to grow, so that we can become more qualified for these roles and positions that we really want to serve. We want to serve in and through. And so right, whom your right hands possess, right? Because we're the, what does God say? He says, yeah, I will uphold you with my right hand of righteousness, right? So we know that we have appointed for them as to their wives and the captives whom their right hands possess. So take this also as at that level as well, in order that there should be no difficulty for thee, and God is oft forgiving, most merciful, right? 37:48. So thou mayest differ the turn of any of them that thou pleaseth, and thou mayest receive any thou pleaseth, and there is no blame on thee if thou invite one whose turn thou hast set aside. And the first turn was 37:49, and the second turn is 37:50. This were not nair to the cool of their eyes, the prevention of their grief, and their satisfaction, that of all of them with that which thou hast to give them. 37:52. And God knows all that is in your hearts. 37:53. And God is all-knowing, most forbearing. It is not lawful for thee to marry more women after this, nor to change them for other wives or husbands, even though their beauty, or the just illusions may attract thee, right? Except any thy right hand should possess, and God doth watch over all things. And it says, as thy right hand should possess, as handmaidens, right? Because it's the handmaidens who are preparing their oil, their lamps, right, for the bridegroom. And so please take this with spiritual ears and understand it with grace. And so section 7, or I'm going to read the last verse again. So it is not lawful for thee to marry more women after this, nor to change them for other wives, even though their beauty or the illusion may attract or deceive thee, except any thy right hand, and it goes for husbands as well, except any thy right hand should possess as handmaidens, and God doth watch over all things. And so, we don't, when God purifies our religion and through the coming revelation, there is no reason that we should want to adopt or accumulate or marry or bring into ourselves the aspects of this world which look good when he's giving us something which is much more valuable. And so he also wants me to say that as well. So we're going to go on in section 7. O you who believe, enter not the prophets' houses until leave is given you. For a meal, and then not so early as to wait for its preparation, but when you are invited, enter, and when you have taken your meal, disperse without seeking familiar talk. Such behavior annoys the prophet, for he or she is shy to dismiss you, but God is not shy to tell you the truth. And when you ask, the prophets, his ladies, so in regards to the members of the church, for anything you want, ask them from before a screen that makes for greater purity for your hearts and for theirs. Nor is it right for you that you should annoy God's messenger. So this message is at multiple levels. So please just read the verses and go over the verses more than once and just sit with God, and he will unfold more. Right? So nor is it right for you that you should annoy God's messenger, or that you should marry his widows after him at any time. Truly such a thing is in God's sight an enormity. And so if we look up widow, it means a woman who has lost her spouse by death and has not remarried. And a last word or short last line of a paragraph falling at the top of a page or column and considered undesirable with regards to the world, let's say. And so also becoming a widow or widower, lose one's spouse through death. And so you could also take that as not literally the spouse dying, but you dying, right? And so you lose your spouse, the world, when you die, but you gain your spouse, the God in a sense, because you become married to God. And because in God's kingdom you gain when you lose. So it could also be your living spouse. You lose them in your idea of who they are and their idea of who they are. But you gain them even more when they die to themselves and they, they are reawakened to who they are in God, and usually has not remarried, in the sense that you are just, it's just a single purpose. It's a single covenant that is eternal. Right? So after him at any time, truly such a thing is in God's sight an enormity. Whether you reveal anything or conceal it, verily, God has full knowledge of all things. There is no blame on those ladies if they appear before their fathers, or their sons, their brothers, or their brothers' sons, or their sisters' sons, or their women, or the servants of God whom their right hands possess, right? Because this is supposed to be taken symbolically at a higher level of understanding. And ladies, fear God, for God is witness to all things. God and his angels send blessings on the prophet. O you that believe, send you blessings on him, and salute him with all respect. Peace be upon him. Those who annoy God and his messenger, God has cursed them in this world and in the hereafter, and has prepared for them a humiliating punishment. And those who annoy believing men and women undeservedly bear on themselves a calamity and a glaring sin. And then let me see, one second. So we're just going to go ahead and finish the chapter. So section 8, O prophet, tell thy wives or husbands and daughters and sons and believing women and men that they should cast their outer garments over their persons when out of doors. That is most convenient, that they should be known as such and not molested. And God is all forgiving, most merciful, right? Because God is teaching us all, especially in this unpredictable age, that we all must have, and increase our manners and our way of behavior and interacting with others. Truly, if the hypocrites and those in whose hearts is a disease, and those who stir up sedition in the city, desist not, we shall certainly stir thee up against them. Then will they not be able to stay in it as thy neighbors for any length of time. They shall have a curse on them. Wherever they are found, they shall be seized and slain. Such was the practice approved of God among those who lived aforetime. No change wilt thou find in the practice approved of God, right? Because he's just going to he's going to send the angel of death to just take their life once he deems that their time is up. So men ask thee concerning the hour, say, the knowledge 37:71 thereof is with God alone, and what will make thee understand? Perchance the hour is nigh. Verily God has cursed the unbelievers and prepared for them a blazing fire, to dwell therein forever. No protector will they find, nor helper. The day that their faces will be turned over, 37:72, in the fire, they will say, woe to us! Would that we had obeyed God and obeyed the messenger. And they would say, our Lord, we obeyed our chiefs and our great ones, and they misled us as to the right path. Our Lord, give them double chastisement, and curse them with a very great curse. So double chastisement is 37:73. So the number is marrying itself within that single number. So section 9, O you who believe, be you not like those who hurt Moses, 37:74. But God cleared him of the calamities they had uttered, and he was honorable in God's sight. O you who believe, fear God and make your utterance straightforward. 37:75, that he may make your conduct whole and sound, and forgive you your sins. He that obeys God and his messenger has already attained the great victory. 37:76, we did indeed offer the trusts. 37:77, to the heavens and the earth and the mountains. 37:78, but they refused. 37:79. He's just leading me to read the numbers for whoever feels led to look them up. To undertake it. 37:80, being afraid thereof, but man undertook it. 37:81, he was indeed unjust. 37:82, and foolish. So I'm going to read that verse again. We did indeed offer the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to undertake it, being afraid thereof. But man undertook it. He was indeed unjust and foolish. With the result that God has to punish the hypocrites, men and women, and the unbelievers, men and women, and God turns in mercy to the believers, to an extent to the unbelievers, but to the believers, because they make themselves worthy of this mercy. They seek the Lord's pleasure. So with the result that God has to punish the hypocrites, men and women, and the unbelievers, men and women, and God turns in mercy to the believers. 37:84, men and women, for God is oft forgiving, most merciful. And so the following chapter 34 is titled The City of Saba, and the summary says, no good or truth is ever lost. Human power and prosperity are fleeting, but God's power and justice endure and will enforce personal responsibility on man, till the last day. I'm going to look up the page numbers for the first word. So the first word, like I said, it began on he gave it to me on page 1246, but it began on 1245. So I'm going to look up 1245 in the concordance. So in Hebrew, 1245 means to search out by any method, specifically in worship or prayer, by implication to strive after, to beg, beseech, ask, desire, inquire, get, make, inquisition, procure, make requests, require. And this is for the verses which read, one second. For the verses which read, you have indeed in the messenger of God an excellent exemplar, for section 3. For him who hopes in God and the final day, and who remembers God much, when the believers saw the Confederate forces, they said, this is what God and his messenger had promised us. And God and his messenger told us what was true, and it only added to their faith and their zeal and obedience. Among the believers are men who have been true to their covenant with God. Of them some have died, and some still wait. But they have never changed their determination in the least, that God may reward the men of truth for their truth and punish the hypocrites, if that be his will, or turn to them in mercy, for God is oft forgiving, most merciful. And God turned back the unbelievers for all their fury. No advantage did they gain, and enough is God for the believers in their fight. And God is full of strength, exalted in might. And those of the people of the book who aided them, God did take them down from their strongholds and cast terror into their hearts, so that some you slew and some you made captives. And so if I randomly select, because there are over 215 verses, I clicked on Ezra. So we're going to read, there's 4 verses beginning with 262, there's 821, 822, 823. These sought their register among those that were reckoned by genealogy, but they were not found. Therefore were they as polluted, but put from the priesthood. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river of Ahava, that we might afflict ourselves before our God, to seek of him a right way for us, for our little ones, and for our substance. For I was ashamed to require of the king a band of soldiers and horsemen to help us against the enemy in the way, because we had spoken unto the king, saying, the hand of our God is upon all them for good that seek him. But His power and his wrath is against all them that forsake him. So we fasted and besought our God for this, and he was entreated of us. And then in Jeremiah, there are so many, it's a lot. I'm going to read maybe the first 5 or so, and then you can go back and read them, because for Jeremiah, let me see once again, there are over 23. So it begins with 2:24. A wild donkey used to the wilderness, that snuffed up the wind at her pleasure and her occasion, who can turn her away? All they that seek her will not weary themselves. In her month they shall find her. Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways. And when thou art spoiled, what wilt thou do? Though thou clothest thyself with crimson, though thou deckest thee with ornaments of gold, though thou rentest thy face with painting in vain, shalt thou make thyself fair? Thy lovers will displease thee, they will seek thy life. Run you to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem, and see now and know, and seek in the broad places thereof, if you can find a man, if there be any that excuseth judgment, that seeketh the truth, and I will pardon it. Therefore thus saith the Lord of the men of Anathoth, that seek thy life, saying, Prophesy not in the name of the Lord, that thou die not by our hand. And I will make void the counsels of Judah and Jerusalem in this place, and I will cause them to fall by the sword before their enemies, and by the hands of them that seek their lives. And their carcasses will I give to be meat for the fowls of the heaven, and for the beasts of the earth. And I will cause them to eat the flesh of their sons and the flesh of their daughters, and they shall eat every one the flesh of his friend, in the siege and straitness wherewith their enemies, and they that seek their lives, shall straiten them. And afterwards, saith the Lord, I will deliver Zedekiah king of Judah and his servants and the people, and such as are left in the city, from the pestilence, from the sword, and from the famine, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those that seek their life. And he shall smite them with the edge of the sword. He shall not spare them, neither have pity, nor have mercy. And I will give thee into the hands of them that seek thy life, and into the hand of them whose face thou fearest, even into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, and into the hands of the Chaldeans. And when Jehoiakim the king with all his mighty men and all the princes heard his words, the king sought to put him to death. But when Uriah heard it, he was afraid and fled and went into Egypt. And you shall seek me and find me when you shall search for me with all your heart. I will even give them into the hands of their enemies, and into the hand of them that seek their life. And their dead bodies shall be meat unto the fowls of the heaven, and unto the beasts of the earth. And Zedekiah king of Judah and his princes will I give into the hands of their enemies, and into the hand of the enemies that seek their life, and into the hand of the king of Babylon's army, which are gone up from you. So Zedekiah the king sware secretly unto Jeremiah, saying, As the Lord liveth, that made us this soul, I will not put thee to death, neither will I give thee into the hand of these men that seek thy life. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will give Pharaoh Hophra, king of Egypt, into the hand of his enemies, and into the hand of them that seek his life, as I give Zedekiah king of Judah into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, his enemies, and that sought his life. And seekest thou great things for thyself? Seek them not, for, behold, I will bring evil upon all flesh, saith the Lord. But thy life will I give unto thee for a prey in all places whither thou goest, and I will deliver them into the hand of those that seek their lives, and into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, and into the hand of his servants. And afterward it shall be inhabited as in the days of old, saith the Lord. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies, and before them that seek their life, and I will bring evil upon them, even my fierce anger, saith the Lord. And I will send the sword after them, till I have consumed them. In those days and in that time, saith the Lord, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together, going and weeping, they shall go and seek the Lord their God. In those days and in that time, saith the Lord, the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for, and there shall be none, and the sins of Judah, and they shall not be found, for I will pardon them who I reserve. And I'm going to look up the Greek now, so there's too many verses for me to read. So please definitely do take a look and allow God to lead you. So the Greek is to cleanse perfectly, that is, specifically winnow, thoroughly purge. And so in Matthew 3:12, those whose fan is in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor, and gather his wheat into the garner, but he will burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. And then we also have Luke 3:17, whose fan is in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor, and will gather the wheat into his garner, but the chaff he will burn with fire unquenchable. And then we also have 1246, the page I was given, and it means a petition, a request. In Ezra 7:6, this Ezra went up from Babylon, and he was a ready scribe in the law of Moses, which the Lord God of Israel had given, and the king granted him all his requests according to the hand of the Lord his God upon him. And then in Esther, beginning with 5:3, there's 7 verses. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? It shall be given thee to the half of the kingdom. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee? And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in thy sight, of the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet, that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. And the king said again unto Esther on the 2nd day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed even to the half of the kingdom. And so God is just repeating over and over again, ask him whatever you desire, and he will give it to you. As long as you are, striving to get closer to him, and you are obeying his commandments and being true to the covenant you made with him. And so I'm going to continue with Esther 7:3. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at petition, and my people at my request. And the king said unto Esther the queen, The Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan, the place, and 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee? Or what is thy request further, and it shall be done? And so success is guaranteed. Salvation is guaranteed. Within Allah, in God. So don't fear. And so in Greek, it means to prove downright, that is, confute, to convince. And in Acts 18:28, for he mightily convinced the Jews, and that publicly, showing by the scriptures that Jesus was Christ. And so, we're in the last days. Or so that God, Allah, is Lord as well. That God is Lord through the Jesus' gospel, true gospel of unity, which includes the Quran as the last testament in order to complete the message of the gospel. And so I stopped reading. Oh yes. So the second word began on page 1247. So 1247. So God is having me look up consecutive numbers, right? And so there's a message in that as well. So it means a son, a grandson, about. And so in Ezra, beginning with 5:1, then the prophet Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Iddo, prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel, even unto them. Then rose up Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and began to build the house of God which is at Jerusalem, and with them were the prophets of God helping them. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo, and they builded and finished it according to the commandments of God, of the God of Israel, or of the God of Islam, and according to the commandments of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, which is, king of Persia, who is the husband of, well, maybe not this Artaxerxes, but Artaxerxes was another name for King Xerxes, which was the husband of Esther. So the Haggai, it says here, he was the first of three prophets exiled. He was the first of three post-exile prophets from the Neo-Babylonian exile of the house of Judah, with Zechariah his contemporary, and Malachi, who lived about 100 years later, who belonged to the period of Jewish history which began after the return from captivity in Babylon, and his name means my holidays. And then in Daniel, we have, beginning with 3:25, and there are 4 verses for both Ezra and Daniel. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God, or the prophet of God, really. Peace be upon Jesus. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this. So for those who are having difficulty understanding what these verses mean, allow God to lead you, but I would also say try to listen to the entire Bible and just play the audio Bible, and just even if you don't understand it, just allow it to just penetrate you, and also break it down. So just listen to it and don't try to understand it, just listen to it, but don't judge what you're listening to. But then also at the same time, take parts of the Bible and try to learn about those parts, break the Bible down, and maybe allow God to lead you with regards to where to start, which parts maybe will have the most significance, and so they'll minister the most to you. And so when you study those at whatever time, it'll help you retain and remember that information. And then just God will take you along on a journey, and you're going to learn and pick up so many different things, right? And so just don't discard anything, even if it feels like it doesn't make sense. Allow God to make sense of it and make it clear to you, right? And so just at face value, be a lot more open than you may normally be. So don't have too many apprehensions, and just have an open heart, and really allow God to take over, and just, I don't know, venture into this unknown area, and you're going to realize that it's a lot more familiar to you and your faith, and the capacity what you have contained within yourself than you may have realized. And so God is just going to unlock these gifts within you. And so he wants me to reread Daniel, so I'm going to start from the beginning. So he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the prophet of God. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, and though thou knowest all this, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancients of Days, and they brought him near before him. So we're going to read the Greek now. So the Greek for 1247 is to be an attendant that is wait upon. Menially, or as a host, friend, or figuratively teacher, technically to act as a Christian deacon. Minister, serve, use, the use of a deacon. This is from Bible Study Tools. So it says here, deacon, right? The definition of it. So anglicized form of the Greek word diakonos, meaning a runner, messenger, servant. For a long period, a feeling of mutual jealousy had existed between the Hebrews, or Jews proper, who spoke the sacred language of Palestine, and the Hellenists, or Jews of the Grecian speech, who had adopted the Grecian language and read the Septuagint version of the Bible instead of the Hebrew. This jealousy early appeared in the Christian community, so it was alleged by the Hellenists that their widows were overlooked in the daily distribution of alms. The spirit must be checked. The apostles accordingly advised the disciples to look out for 7 men of good report, full of the Holy Ghost, and men of practical wisdom, who should take entire charge of this distribution, leaving them free to devote themselves entirely to the spiritual function of their office. In Acts 6, 1-6, 1 second. So it goes on. This was accordingly done. 7 men were chosen, who appeared from their names to have been Hellenists. The name deacon is nowhere applied to them in the New Testament. They are simply called the 7 in 21:8. Their office was at first secular, but it afterwards became also spiritual, for among other qualifications, they must also be apt to teach. In 1 Timothy 3, also both Philip and Stephen, who were of the 7, preached. They did the work of evangelists. And so there are 32 verses. So 1 Timothy 3:10 and 3:13. And let these also first be proved, then let them use the office of deacon, being found blameless. For they that have used the office of deacon well purchase to themselves a good degree and great boldness in the faith which is in Prophet Jesus, or also Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and peace be upon Jesus and Moses, because it's one message. And so ultimately, which is in our God, Allah, the Creator. And then I also clicked on 2 Timothy 1:18. The Lord grant unto him that he may find mercy of the Lord in that day, and in how many things he ministered unto me at Ephesus, thou knowest very well. And then I also clicked on Mark. We have, and he was there in the wilderness 40 days tempted of Satan, and was within the wild beast, and the angel ministered unto him. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and immediately the fever left her, and she ministered unto them. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. Who also, when he was in Galilee, followed him and ministered unto him, and many other women, which came up with him unto Jerusalem. And I'm going to have to take a break because the gardeners are here, and then I'll continue.